Imagine finding out your father died from a Facebook comment. And worse, everyone in your family already knew. What happens next will leave you speechless. I still remember the exact moment I realized something wasn't right. We were sitting on the couch, me, my fiancée Emily, and her younger brother Jeremy, watching reruns of an old sitcom like we always did on Sunday afternoons. The kind of harmless background noise that lets you pretend everything's normal. Emily had her head on my shoulder, laughing at a joke she'd heard a dozen times. But Jeremy, he was just staring at the screen, not really watching, like he was somewhere else entirely. That's when it hit me. Emily still didn't know her dad had died. And Jeremy, the only other person in her family who'd even remotely been in touch, hadn't said a word. A month. That's how long it had been. 30 days since the man she hadn't seen in years was buried. And nobody told her. Not his sister, not his new wife, not the cousin who used to send Christmas cards. Not even Jeremy, who had clearly known this whole time and had been coming over for dinner like everything was fine. The worst part? I didn't find out in some dramatic, uncover the truth kind of way. It was a stupid accident. A Facebook post, of all things. Her dad's second wife posted a picture of the funeral wreaths with a caption about saying goodbye. I only saw it because someone tagged Emily's full name in the comments, saying how sad it was she didn't come. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it was an old post or someone being dramatic. But when I clicked through and saw the date, it was from 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, and she had no idea. I remember sitting there, my thumb frozen over my phone, rereading the post like it would somehow change if I blinked enough times. But it didn't. Her father had passed away. He'd been cremated, and no one had thought she deserved to know. I didn't tell her right away. That part still eats at me. I kept it to myself for 2 full days, just watching her, trying to wrap my head around how someone could be shut out like that, trying to figure out how I was going to be the one to tell her. Because let's be honest, there was no one else. Her dad wasn't exactly father of the year. He bailed when she was 12, barely called, showed up to her high school graduation drunk, and that was the last time she saw him. Still, I knew she loved him in that complicated, painful way you love someone who left you behind. When I finally confronted Jeremy about it, I expected shock. Denial, maybe, but he didn't even flinch. Yeah, he said. Just like that. I found out the day after. Mom called me. Said there wasn't going to be a service for his kids from the first marriage. They wanted it small. I remember just staring at him. And you didn't think Emily should know? Jeremy's shoulders tensed. What good would it have done, man? He didn't want her there. He barely even talked to her. She cried for months when he ghosted her birthday 3 years ago and still didn't block his number. I could feel the anger crawling up my throat. That wasn't your call. She had the right to know. She still does. He didn't answer. Just mumbled something about protecting her and looked away. That's when I knew it wasn't just carelessness. It was deliberate. Someone decided she didn't need closure. Someone decided she didn't belong. So I told her. I sat her down on a quiet Wednesday night while she was folding laundry on the couch and told her that her father had passed away a month ago. I showed her the post, even though I hated myself for doing it that way. And I watched her whole body freeze like someone had just unplugged her from the world. She didn't cry right away. She didn't scream or ask a million questions. She just stared at the photo on my phone, white flowers in a circle with a caption that read, "Rest easy, Ray." Then she asked me the one question I wasn't prepared for. Why didn't anyone tell me? I didn't have an answer. Because, I don't know, didn't feel like enough. And they didn't think you mattered, was too cruel to say out loud. She didn't talk much the rest of that night. She just folded the rest of the clothes in silence and went to bed early, her back turned to me. And I lay there in the dark, knowing that something had cracked between us. Not because I told her, but because I was the only one who did. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest kind of rejection. And I was just starting to realize this story was only beginning. The next morning, Emily didn't say much. She made coffee like she always did, poured 2 mugs, and set mine down in front of me without looking up. Her eyes were swollen, just a little, but her voice was calm, almost too calm, like she'd locked herself in a soundproof room where grief couldn't reach her. I didn't push. I wanted to. But I knew if I tried to fix it too soon, she'd shut down completely. She didn't talk about her dad. Not directly. But around lunchtime, I saw her scrolling through old texts on her phone, going back years. Most of them were one-sided. Messages like, "Happy birthday, Dad. Hope you're doing okay," followed by a seen notification and no reply. A few scattered responses here and there. "Thanks. Been busy. Maybe next time." That kind of thing. Then she did something I wasn't expecting. She opened her contacts and called him. I didn't stop her. I just watched, quietly, As she held the phone to her ear, her fingers trembling slightly. It rang once, twice. Then the line cut to voicemail. His voice came on, distant and scratchy, like it had been recorded years ago. "Hey, this is Ray. Leave a message. Or don't. Whatever." She hung up without saying a word. That was the first time she cried. No sobbing, no wailing, just silent tears that ran down her cheeks while she stared at her phone like it had just betrayed her. And maybe it had. Maybe, in some twisted way, she'd still been hoping it was all a mistake, that the post, the silence, even Jeremy, were wrong. After a minute, she wiped her face and got up. "I'm going to see my mom." I didn't argue. Her mom and Ray had split over a decade ago, but they were still connected through the wreckage he'd left behind. Emily needed someone who understood what it meant to grieve a man you didn't know how to love anymore. She was gone for a few hours. I spent that time pacing, trying to figure out what the hell had happened with Jeremy, why he decided it wasn't her right to know, whether it was some misguided effort to protect her or something worse. When she came back, she looked hollow. She dropped her purse on the floor and sat down without even taking off her coat. "Mom knew," she said. Her voice was brittle. I felt something tighten in my chest. "What?" "She found out a week after it happened. Said she didn't want to upset me until she had all the details. Said she was waiting for the right time." Emily let out a short, bitter laugh. "The right time? Like there's a right time to say, hey, your father died and was buried without you." I sat down next to her, not touching her, just close enough in case she needed me. She showed me the obituary. His wife didn't even list me in it, just said he was survived by his loving wife, their son, and close family. Like I never existed. I didn't know what to say. There was no spin to put on it, no silver lining, just a brutal fact. They'd erased her, completely. Then she said something that really hit me. "You know what hurts the most? Not that he died. Not that I didn't get to say goodbye. But that even in death, he chose to forget me. And everyone else let him." It was like she'd been holding on to some invisible thread all these years, that one day, maybe he'd call, or apologize, or show up to something that mattered. And now that thread had snapped. Finality. That's what death does. It takes away the maybes. She pulled something out of her coat pocket and held it up. A folded piece of paper. "The obituary," she said. "I asked Mom to print it for me." I took it gently. "Read the standard lines. Beloved husband, loyal friend, a man of laughter and quiet strength." Quiet strength. The same quiet that ignored birthday cards and left texts unanswered. Emily stood up. "I want to talk to Jeremy." I flinched a little. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "He knew. He lied. He had dinner with us 3 times since it happened and never said a word. I just want to hear it from him." She called him, and for the first time in days, he picked up right away. I could hear his voice from where I sat, nervous, defensive, already preparing an excuse. She asked if he could come over. Said she wasn't mad, just needed to understand. He agreed, said he'd be over in 20 minutes. When he showed up, he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His hoodie was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. But what hit me the hardest was how guilty he looked, like a kid caught hiding something fragile that he accidentally broke. He started, barely through the door. "Why?" she asked. No hello. No small talk. Just that one word. Jeremy swallowed hard. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't think you'd want to know." She blinked. "Why would you think that?" He shrugged, eyes on the floor. "Because you always said he didn't matter anymore. That you were done with him." Emily's hands clenched into fists. "I said that because I had to, not because I meant it." Jeremy didn't say anything. She shook her head slowly. "You should have told me." "I know." There was silence for a while. Then, quietly, Jeremy said, "I didn't go either." Emily looked up. "I couldn't. I got the call, and I thought about it. But then I remembered all the nights he promised to visit and didn't. How Mom cried on your birthday because he forgot again. I didn't want to stand there and pretend he was something he wasn't." Emily nodded. "I get that. But I still should have had the choice." He nodded back. "You're right. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something." That night, after Jeremy left, Emily finally let me hold her. She cried into my chest for what felt like hours. And I realized something. It wasn't just grief for her father. It was grief for the life she thought she might have had. The one where her father called. Where he showed up. Where she was listed in the obituary, not deleted from it. Where she got to say goodbye. But she didn't. So now, all she had was the silence. And somehow, she had to live with that. 2 days after Jeremy came over, Emily asked me for space. Not in the dramatic, relationship-ending kind of way. She didn't pack a bag or slam the door. She just needed to be alone with her thoughts. I offered to stay at my brother's for a couple days so she could have the apartment to herself. She nodded. Didn't say much else. Before I left, I asked her if she wanted me to take the obituary with me. She shook her head and quietly folded it into the back pocket of a journal I hadn't seen her use since college. That's when I knew she wasn't done processing. Not even close. I checked in with her each night. Just simple texts. Me. You doing okay? Emily. Trying. The third night, I came home to grab some clothes and found her asleep on the couch, curled up in the same hoodie she wore through half of grad school. The journal was open on the coffee table. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But the page was turned just enough that I couldn't help but read the first line. It was a letter. To him. Dear Dad. I found out from a Facebook post. Not a phone call. Not a message. Not even a whisper. Just a tagged photo and a stranger's condolences. I stopped there. Closed the book. I didn't want to steal anything from her, not even this pain. I covered her with a blanket and left without waking her. The next morning, she texted me. Emily, you can come home now, if you want. When I walked in, she was in the kitchen boiling water for tea. No tears, no big scene. Just a nod in my direction and 2 mugs on the counter. You read it, didn't you? She asked. I hesitated. Just the first few lines. She gave a tiny smile. It's okay. I kind of wanted you to. We sat at the table, the letter between us. She ran her fingers along the spine of the journal like it was made of glass. I started writing to him last night, she said. Not for closure. Not because I expect him to hear me. Just because I need to get the words out somewhere. I nodded. I think that makes sense. I don't know if I'm sad, she admitted, or angry, or just numb. I think I'm a little bit of all three. Then she told me something I didn't expect. When I was a kid, I used to pretend he was out saving people. I blinked. Saving people? She nodded. Like, if he missed my birthday, it was because he had to pull someone out of a burning building. Or he was lost in the woods trying to rescue a dog. Something ridiculous. But it made it easier. The idea that he wasn't there because he was doing something important. She laughed. A dry, tired laugh. Turns out he just didn't care enough. I didn't know how to respond to that. So I just reached for her hand and held it. That night, she asked me something that caught me completely off guard. Do you think it's possible to miss someone and hate them at the same time? I thought about it for a second. I think that's probably the most honest kind of missing there is. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Good. Because I don't know what to do with all these feelings otherwise. In the following days, something shifted. She wasn't fine far from it, but she wasn't frozen anymore either. She started cleaning the apartment with an energy I hadn't seen in weeks. Rearranging bookshelves, tossing old clothes into donation piles, moving furniture like she needed the space to breathe again. It was her way of reclaiming something. Her space. Her life. Her control. Then, one afternoon, I came home and found her packing a small bag. I'm going to visit his grave, she said. I didn't ask how she found out where he was buried. I just offered to drive her. She said no. I need to do this by myself. And I respected that. She left early the next morning. She was gone most of the day. When she came home that evening, she didn't say much. Just walked in, set down her keys, and hugged me for a long time. Later that night, I asked her how it went. She took a deep breath. It was weird. There wasn't even a headstone yet, just a temporary plaque and a vase with dead flowers. His wife wasn't there. No signs anyone had visited in weeks. She looked away. I talked to him. For a while. Told him everything. How much it hurt. How small he made me feel. How I used to pray he'd call. And how every time he didn't, I felt a little more invisible. And did it help? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know. But I didn't cry. Not even once. That night, as we lay in bed, I could feel her breathing slow, calm, like something in her had finally been exhaled. And right before she fell asleep, she whispered, "He's not going to haunt me anymore." I kissed her forehead. Good. He doesn't deserve to. She nodded against my chest, already drifting off. For the first time since it all happened, she slept through the night. And I realized something. Healing doesn't come all at once. Sometimes, it starts with a letter no one will ever read. It had been almost 2 weeks since Emily visited her father's grave. Since that long, quiet day, she left without a word and came back, changed. Not fixed, not healed, but different. Lighter somehow. Like she'd left something there at the cemetery, a version of herself that didn't need his validation anymore. But even as she tried to move forward, there was still one thing weighing her down. She didn't say it out loud at first, but I could tell it was brewing. Every time she opened her phone and scrolled past a cousin's vacation photo or her aunt's recipe post, I saw it in her face. Not sadness, confusion. Betrayal. A question she couldn't shake. Why didn't anyone tell me? It was more than just Jeremy. More than her mom. There were people, family members she'd grown up seeing every Thanksgiving, people who used to pinch her cheeks and slip her extra cookies when she was little, who knew, who talked about it, who posted about it, who let a whole month go by without saying a word. She finally brought it up one night after dinner. We were sitting on the floor of the living room, organizing an old photo box she'd found in the closet. One of those, I'll deal with this later, boxes from years ago. She picked up a faded Polaroid of her and her dad at a park. She was maybe 6, grinning, holding his hand like he was her entire world. I just keep thinking, she said quietly, was there a group chat I got cut out of? Did they all just decide I wasn't part of the family anymore? I didn't know what to say. She looked at me, her voice trembling. You know what's messed up? My cousin Melissa commented, so beautiful, under the funeral post. Melissa, the same cousin who asked me to help write her maid of honor speech 2 years ago. The same one who asked if I could Venmo her gas money when her dog got sick. And she couldn't pick up the phone? I nodded. You're allowed to be angry. I'm not angry, she snapped, then caught herself. Okay, maybe I am. She stood up and started pacing. I mean, what do I do with this now? Do I just pretend it didn't happen? Go to the next family wedding and act like I don't know how little they thought of me? I didn't have answers. But I listened. Later that night, she started typing. A message. A long one. I didn't ask who it was for. Turns out, it was for her Aunt Diane, the one she used to stay with every summer in high school. The one who always said she was just like her father, meant as a compliment back then. She let me read it before she hit send. Hi Diane. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out because something's been weighing on me. I found out 2 weeks ago, through a Facebook post, that Dad passed away. I know you were there at the service. I know others were, too. But I wasn't told. And I need to understand why. I'm not reaching out to start a fight. I just want to know, did someone ask you not to tell me? Was I excluded on purpose? Or did everyone just assume I wouldn't care? Because I did. I do. I didn't need to be in the front row. I didn't need a speech or a seat at the dinner. I just needed to know. I deserve the choice. And it hurts to think that no one thought I earned even that. Please don't ignore this. Even if the answer is uncomfortable. I just want the truth. She stared at it for a while, then hit send. The reply didn't come for 2 days. When it did, it was messy, defensive. Aunt Diane said she wasn't sure what the boundaries were, that things were complicated, and that Ray's wife didn't want drama. But she also admitted it. Someone in the family, likely Ray's wife, had specifically asked them not to contact Emily. She said it would make things harder, the message read. She said it would be best if it was kept small. Emily stared at the screen. Best for who? She didn't reply. She just turned off her phone and tossed it face down on the table. That night, we went for a walk. No destination, just blocks of silence, the occasional crunch of leaves underfoot, and the distant sound of life happening in other people's windows. Eventually, she spoke. I always thought grief was about losing someone, she said. But it's not. It's about realizing they were already gone. And now you have to grieve everything you never got. She stopped walking, looked up at the night sky. I didn't lose a dad this month. I lost the illusion that I ever really had one. It was the first time she said that. Out loud. No hesitation. We stood there for a moment. Then she smiled barely, but it was real. I think I'm done chasing answers. If they didn't want me to know, then I don't need them to explain why. That's their shame to carry. When we got back to the apartment, she pulled the journal back out, wrote something quickly, tore the page, and taped it to the back of the old photo of her and her dad. I peeked at it later. It just said, I remember what you looked like when you still tried. That's the version I'll keep. Then she tucked the photo into a shoebox of other old memories, some sweet, some sour, and slid it back into the closet. She didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She just closed the door. After Emily sent that message to Aunt Diane and read the reply that confirmed what she'd feared, something changed in how she looked at her family. Not in an angry, burning bridges way. More like she'd just stopped expecting anything from them. And with that, the hurt lost its teeth. But then came the next challenge, our wedding. We'd gotten engaged just 6 months earlier, long before any of this had happened. Back then, she was buzzing with excitement, already pinning bouquet ideas and debating between outdoor versus ballroom. Her family, at least some of them, were supposed to be a big part of it. We'd even joked about how her cousin Melissa would absolutely cry during the ceremony and how Aunt Diane would probably try to take over the planning if we weren't careful. No? That excitement was gone, replaced with a tight-lipped practicality. We were sitting on the floor, invitations spread out between us, and I could tell she was holding something back. She'd flip through a name, pause, then quietly move it to a maybe pile. I finally asked, You okay? She looked at me, hesitated, then said, "I think I want to uninvite some people." She said it so gently, like she needed permission. "Okay," I said. "Who?" She picked up one of the envelopes. It had Diane's name on it. Another had Melissa's. "I can't sit across from people who erased me," she said. "I can't pretend we're fine just because they'll clap politely and post about how magical the wedding was." I nodded. "So don't." She exhaled, deep and shaky, and I could see the relief hit her like a wave. For weeks, she'd been holding this sense of duty to be the bigger person, to keep the peace. But there was no peace to keep anymore. There was just a choice. The wedding was 6 weeks away when the box arrived. No return address. Just our names handwritten in uneven cursive on the top, like someone who didn't want to be known but needed to be heard. Emily found it on the porch when she came home from work. I was in the kitchen making dinner when she walked in holding it with both hands like it might break if she breathed too hard. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between cautious and curious, with a shadow of something I couldn't name. "There's no cinder," she said softly, placing it on the kitchen island. We stared at it for a while before she slowly opened it. Inside was tissue paper, folded neatly. Underneath that, a thin silver frame, and in it, a photo we'd never seen before. It was her and her dad. She was maybe 5 or 6, sitting on his shoulders, laughing, reaching for a balloon just out of frame. Someone had captured the moment mid-laugh, her tiny fingers curled, his face tilted upward like he was proud to be holding her so high. Emily didn't say anything. Her hands were shaking. And then we saw the letter. It wasn't long. Just a few lines, typed on paper that had been folded so many times it was fraying at the edges. "Emily, I don't know if this will make a difference. Probably not. But I found this photo in an old drawer while clearing out Ray's things. He kept it. For all these years. I thought you should have it. Lynn, Ray's second wife." Emily read it twice. Then again. She didn't speak for a full minute. I could see the war going on behind her eyes, wanting to feel something, fighting off every emotion trying to claw its way out. "I don't know what this is supposed to be," she said finally. "A peace offering? An apology?" She turned the frame over in her hands. "Why now?" I didn't answer. Because truthfully, I didn't know either. Maybe Lynn felt guilty. Maybe she'd seen Emily's message to Aunt Diane. Or maybe, after going through Ray's things and finding the photo, something inside her cracked. Emily placed the letter on the counter and stared at the photo again. "It's a nice picture," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked happy. She set the frame down gently, like it was made of something fragile. And maybe it was. "I forgot he used to look at me like that," she said. I stepped closer. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "I will be." That night, she didn't cry. She didn't say much at all. But before bed, she took the photo out of the frame, slid it into a drawer in her nightstand, and said, "I'll keep it. But not for him. For me." The next day, she wrote back, "Lynn, thank you for sending the photo. I don't know what your intentions were, and honestly, it doesn't matter. I'll never understand why I was left out of everything. But I'm moving on. I'm getting married soon, to someone who never makes me question whether I matter. And I'm done carrying grief for someone who couldn't be bothered to carry me. Take care. Emily." She hit send without asking for my opinion. That night, we picked up where we'd left off on wedding prep. She smiled while reviewing the music playlist. Actually smiled. Not forced, not distracted, real. And then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm going to say something about him at the wedding." I blinked. "You sure?" She nodded. "Not a tribute. Not a speech. Just a line. In my vows." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of line?" She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Thank you for showing me that love means showing up, especially when it's hard. That's the kind of father I want our kids to have one day. That's the kind of man I'm marrying." I didn't respond at first. I was too caught up trying not to cry in front of her. But eventually, I managed to say, "Then I'll be the kind of husband who earns that." She smiled. I know. It wasn't about Ray anymore. It was about writing her own ending. Or maybe her own beginning. The ceremony was small, just like we wanted. We'd rented this tucked-away little vineyard about an hour out of the city. Nothing extravagant, just a quiet, open space where the light hit everything soft and golden. It felt peaceful, like the whole place exhaled when the music started. Emily walked down the aisle in a dress that wasn't even her first choice. It was her third, actually. But the way she carried herself, you'd think it was made just for her. Everyone stood as she walked, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, really. It was like seeing her all over again for the first time. This version of her that had come through the storm stronger, more grounded. But the thing that hit me the hardest wasn't her vows, or the way she smiled when we said, "I do." It was the seat. We had left one seat empty in the front row. Just one. She never said whose it was for. She didn't need to. A simple white flower rested on it. No plaque. No sign. Just space. Some of the guests noticed. I saw them glance at it during the ceremony. A few whispered, curious. But most didn't ask. Those who knew knew. After the ceremony, while everyone filtered toward the reception area, I saw her standing near that chair alone. She wasn't crying. She wasn't smiling. Just standing still, like she was letting something settle in her bones. When I walked over, she looked at me and said quietly, "I thought I'd feel sadder." "You don't." She shook her head. "No. I think I feel done." We didn't talk about it again. We didn't have to. The reception was filled with laughter and dancing, and so much clapping that my hands actually stung by the end of the night. Jenna made a speech that had everyone crying, including Emily. And her college roommate Sam gave a toast that somehow managed to mention tequila, Shakespeare, and my awful cooking in the same breath. There were no fake smiles. No pretenses. Just joy, raw and unfiltered. At one point during dinner, Emily pulled me aside. "I saw Aunt Diane texted me," she said. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. What did she say? She said the photo was beautiful. That she cried when she saw it on my Instagram. "You posted it?" She nodded. Caption said, "For the girl he used to lift on his shoulders, and the woman who carried herself the rest of the way." I stared at her for a second. "That's really good." She smirked. Jenna helped. I looked at her then, not as the woman who'd been grieving, not as the daughter who'd been excluded, but as the person standing next to me now, whole. Not because she'd gotten every answer, but because she'd stopped needing them. Later that night, just before we left the venue, I found her outside near the vines, barefoot and holding her heels in one hand. She turned to me and whispered, "I think I finally forgave him." I walked over and wrapped my arms around her from behind. "Why?" She leaned back into me. "Because tonight, I didn't think about him. Not once. Until now." She laughed a little, almost surprised by her own words. "Is that weird?" "No," I said. "I think that's healing." The stars were bright that night. No city lights to dim them. And we stood there for a long time, quietly, just taking it in. There was nothing left to say. The seat had stayed empty. But her life? It was finally full. A week after the wedding, life settled into this unexpected calm. Not boring, not rushed, just quiet in the best way. Our living room still smelled faintly like peonies from a leftover bouquet, and the corner of the kitchen was cluttered with unopened wedding gifts and half-written thank you notes. Emily moved slower in the mornings. She'd make coffee and sip it by the window, barefoot, wrapped in her robe like she was learning how to exist in peace again. But something lingered. Not heavy or loud, but still there. One morning, I found her sitting at the table with the same journal she'd used weeks ago, the one she started writing in after learning about her father's death. She was flipping through the pages, not writing this time, just reading, tracing her own words with her fingers. When she looked up at me, she said, "I think I need to do one more thing." She didn't explain. She just closed the journal, grabbed her keys, and said, "I'll be back by lunch." She came home 3 hours later with no makeup, wind-tangled hair, and tear-streaked cheeks, but she was smiling. A quiet, steady smile. The kind that says, "I did something hard, and I survived it." She walked into the living room, took the framed photo Lynn had sent, and placed it gently into a shoebox. Then she added the obituary clipping, the printed letter, and a handful of pages torn from her journal. She closed the box, sealed it with tape, and wrote in thick black marker across the top, "To the past, with love, but no return address." She tucked it deep into the back of our hallway closet, behind old coats and a stack of board games we rarely used. And that was that. Later that night, I asked what she did that morning. "I went back to the cemetery," she said. "You saw his grave again?" She nodded. "I brought a letter. One last one." I waited, letting her take her time. "I told him everything I never got to say," she continued. "That I spent years waiting for a version of him that never came. That I hated how much space he took up in my life, even when he wasn't there. And that I was done giving him room in my head." She looked at me, eyes clear. Then I folded the letter, placed it under a stone by the marker, and walked away. No ceremony. No tears this time. Just a simple act of letting go. She leaned into me and whispered, "That was the goodbye he never gave me, so I gave it to myself." And I realized closure doesn't come in big, dramatic moments. It comes in shoeboxes you seal shut, in letters you don't send, in deciding, finally, that someone's absence doesn't have to define your presence. The next morning, she smiled when she woke up. A full, unguarded smile. She didn't mention him once. And for the first time since this story began, she didn't feel like someone grieving a father. She felt like someone starting her own story, from the very beginning, on her own terms. With me, beside her. And no empty chairs left behind. Are you sure it won't look petty? She asked, quieter now. I said, if they cared more about appearances than about telling you your father died, I don't think they deserve to be there when you promise forever to someone who does show up. That was the first time she smiled in a way that looked like her again. So we started over with the guest list. The new version was shorter, tighter, filled with people who mattered. Her best friend Jenna, who dropped off soup and tissues when Emily got sick last winter. Her old college roommate Sam, who drove 4 hours just to help her try on dresses. People who had earned their seats. She didn't tell anyone they were cut from the list. She didn't need to. But the fallout started anyway. A week after we sent the revised invites, Melissa texted her. No greeting, no question, just, did my invite get lost in the mail? Emily showed me the message. What do I even say? I told her, say the truth, or say nothing. You don't owe her a performance. She typed for a minute, then deleted it, then typed again, then finally sent. No, it didn't get lost. That was it. No explanation, no apology, just a simple acknowledgement that some bridges are meant to stay unbuilt. Melissa didn't reply. We started planning the wedding differently after that. The whole tone shifted. It wasn't about impressing people or filling tables. It became about building something real with the people who had actually been there, not the ones who disappeared when it mattered most. I'll never forget the moment she picked her dress. It wasn't even one she'd originally bookmarked. It was simpler, more understated. But when she stepped out of the dressing room, something in her posture changed. She looked grounded, like someone who had lost things, yes, but had found herself in the wreckage. As we drove home that day, she said, you know what's funny? I think losing him, really losing him, might be the thing that finally let me grow up. I glanced over. How so? She shrugged. Because for years, I was chasing a version of love that only ever disappointed me. And now I'm choosing one that doesn't. She reached over and took my hand. And that feels like a better way to start a marriage than pretending everything's perfect. We kept driving, the dress in the back seat, fluttering slightly with the windows cracked. The guest list was smaller now, the budget tighter, but the weight on her shoulders? Lighter than I'd ever seen. She wasn't the same woman who had cried on the couch reading an obituary she was never meant to see. She was something stronger. And our wedding was no longer a celebration for everyone. It was a celebration for her.